Welcome back to the Vulnerable Power Show, Season 3, with a new format this season, diving deeper into leadership mastery, revealing the secrets and keys for you to access next-level leadership performance, power, and impact. We spotlight leaders who have done their inner work and are in a zone of genius and mastery, truly ascending leadership. Join us in these heart-centered and improvised dialogues where we intend to inspire, empower, and encourage you wherever you're at on your leadership journey, inviting you to pursue your mission and soul's calling. We'll show you live demonstrations of practical tools and techniques you can use immediately to step forward and be the leader you came here to be. Learn how to live your calling and mission, making the impact for collective good as you too envision the new world you wish to see. As the Dalai Lama once said, the world doesn't need more successful people. We need more peacemakers, healers, restorers, storytellers, and lovers of all kinds. Greetings, everybody. Greetings and welcome back. Welcome back. We are in Season 3. As I said in the inaugural episode, where's the time gone? And today, we are going to get real practical on the Vulnerable Power Show. And ironically, even this remote concept of crisis, PR, public relations, is going to bring about and synthesize with vulnerability. As always, our intention here, if you've never seen the show, is to inspire you as the leader that you are, wherever you're at on this journey. And this season, we're going to reformat, as you may have already seen. And we're going to start by highlighting my guest, who I'll introduce in a moment, a guru in the crisis PR community. And if you don't know what that is, like I didn't a few years ago before I really got to know Dave, a soul brother, you're going to find out. And then we're going to actually equip you with practical know-how more than before in the last 2 seasons. And today, Dave's going to share some of his genius. We're going to actually do a case study, the second half, shall we say, of today's episode, of a conscious leadership situation, a crisis, shall we say, where an organization may be hanging in the balance because of some reputational harm, and that can cause catastrophic harm. So real implications and how vulnerability can come in to play. So today's theme is the good, the bad, and the ugly of leadership. And certainly my guest today, this soul brother, David Oates, knows all about this and how to deal with the ugly in a good way, in a safe and vulnerable way. So a little bit about Dave before I kind of check in with him and get rocking and rolling. And if you don't know, we're going to improvise. We have a general idea of what we're going to do and what we're going to talk about. We're going to riff. This guy truly is a public relations guru, over 3 decades, both in the private sector, starting off in the public sector. And if I can say it, and hopefully I won't require crisis PR for this, hoorah, as a naval officer. Is that a Marine call? I may have said the wrong call. What's the naval call, Dave? What's the naval call? You guys have a call? I think everybody
we don't have a call.
You don't have a call?
Well, actually, we have we would say last call. That was about what we would be known out there. Call. But that's and some of my Navy brethren may take exception to that, but look, trust me.
So we'll both need crisis PR by the end of my improvising and where I'm going to take Dave into the deep end of this deep dive we're going to take today. So starting off as a naval officer, in the PR realm, private sector, even in the nonprofit sector. So even if he's not as woo-woo as, let's say, somebody like me, today, we're going to talk about something that conscious organizations and leaders certainly need, his expertise. And I've used Dave's expertise since first meeting him in this executive network. Shout out to Provisors in Southern California. I've known him quite a long time, and I've called upon him quite a few times. So Dave, without further ado, you got an MBA, you got an APR, which is not a police APR out on you. That is an accredited public relations specialist. For those that don't know,
APB.
Yeah, APB, APR, all these letters. I got an ESQ, MDR, LMNOP. You've written books on this. Brother, how are you? And thank you. I'm really excited for something that may not seem spiritual or what I'm all about. It is very much up your alley. So how you doing today, Dave? And thanks for being with us, brother.
I am so, as a friend of mine says, I'm so blessed and highly favored. I've been looking forward to this talk for so long, my friend. It's good to see you.
So if you don't know what crisis PR is, and we're going to get all into this, okay? I'm going to warm you up to it really quickly and a little preview of it. This beautiful soul
literally, I mean, it's kind of, as I say, there's an algorithm, there's a synchronicity, God, the universe, however you want to approach it, different strokes for different folks. I start my sabbatical. Many of you may know this about my journey and my leadership, healing, mastery, and all this. And at the early part of my journey, I called on Dave for some traditional PR stuff. And David had only then what I call downloaded and really incepted what is now this genius idea. And I told him then, and now he's seeing it more and more. Dave, this is freaking genius, bro. So this is even more beautiful to have you on, Dave, and I'm equally excited because I don't know if you knew this in hindsight, preparing for today's show and kind of feeling into it, I was like, wow, I'll be darned. Our paths kind of mirrored one another because I don't think like I knew back then, what is this relational alchemy going to be? What is crisis PR going to be? So let's talk about that. Let's dive into this early part of your journey. You were in traditional PR. So talk to us about this before and after. How did you unify this? How did you make this a full-time gig? This little nudge of yours, this PR thing.
Yeah. So the full story is, I was, as you mentioned, I was a Navy officer, and the first part of my career, I was what they called a Navy surface warfare officer. So I'm on surface ships in combat and engineering roles, a junior officer. So taking divisions.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
I appreciate that. I promise you I got more out of it than I gave. And the reason it is because I grew up on my first ship learning how to lead, and this sort of dovetails into what I'll talk about how I got into PR. I learned early on through a series of failures how to not shortchange myself. And I can tell you, I was on my first ship full time. I reported on board. I'm now the division officer. And within 4 months, I get fired from my first job. Worst 2 hours of my entire Navy career until I got reinstated. And it was because an exercise that we were doing went wrong. And there were a whole bunch of other factors outside of my control. And at first I was mad because I thought that the other factors played a significant role in that. And if you look at it empirically, you go, yeah, these were outside your controls. You should not have taken the fall for this. But it was probably about a month after that exercise. I'm reinstated. I'm just trying to get my feet back on there. My confidence was shot. And what it dawned on me, it was one of those aha moments that, yeah, there may have been factors out of my control. But once I figured out what my part on that was, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was, in all candor, I realized I expected to fail at that exercise. Like I walked in with the mindset that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't going to succeed, and that this was going to be a train wreck from the start. And it was at that point, whatever you want to call it, serendipity, spiritual awakening. You realize that we manifest what we believe. If we are so anxiety ridden about the failure that will come before it ever materializes, right? We will realize that self-fulfilling prophecy. Yep. We will set ourselves up to fail. And at that point, as a 22, soon to be 23-year-old.
Wow.
And I realized at that point, you sort of go back to your, high school and elementary school and childhood. And I went all the way back. I swear to God, Haas, I went all the way back to when I was 8 years old and on Little League team, standing there squaring up against the pitcher who was a friend of mine, waiting, holding the bat in my hand and being so afraid to take that bat off of my shoulder.
You recalled it, so it's almost like you went back and could trace it. Is that what you're saying?
I swear to God, I'm going to write a book at one point, and it's going to say, "Don't ever be afraid. Don't ever be afraid to swing the bat."
If you're new, you're joining because you heard about this because of Dave's promotion of it. Honestly, we don't script. I joke. It's like Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm. I didn't know this. This is beautiful, Dave. And at 22, I had my head up my you-know-what, and you did ripen way earlier. This ripened you, like you said.
But I wish I could tell you that it was like some sort of manifestation, right? I got my ass kicked, right? I'm on my first ship. I'm 4 months onto my first ship. I'm a year and a half into my Navy career, which is a minimum 4 years. I'm getting fired from this job. And I realized I thought my career was over. And I realized it was all the way back to that time period. It was like, it literally was. It took about a month to hit a ton of bricks. And I remember I cussed like a sailor. I was literally like sitting in my stateroom.
It's okay, we cuss all the time here. Bring it out.
I was like, mother effing, God damn it. I was like, that's it. Last time. Here's what I'm doing. If I'm going to fail, I'm going to swing at every damn pitch. And from then on, right, I took it as, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to succeed or not, but I'm going to try every time to win. And I know I'm not going to, I don't care about the scoreboard anymore, right? I don't care about the box score. I get 1 out of 4 hits, right? Started going the baseball analogy. Doesn't matter, because that one hit is going to crush it, right? Because every failure in life is a success. And it was visual, because I was struggling, I was failing. And I remember times I was struggling academically in high school, and then I struggled with confidence in elementary school, and I struggled at that little league team, that little league team that's supposed to be fun, and I'm scared to death of swinging and missing in front of my friends, right? That sort of came to me, and at least in my professional career, when I did that, I said, damn it, I'm going to be the best anti-submarine warfare officer I'm going to be. And then I happened to pick up a collateral duty, a part-time little job that they always give junior officers as an intentional one. It happened to be the public affairs officer. I didn't really know what that was. And there was like PR. You're going to write for the base newspaper, and you're going to, when we go to ports of call, you're going to set up tours. And I love to speak, and I was speaking in public and telling the Navy story. And it encompassed so many things that I realized that I enjoyed doing: salesmanship, public speaking, writing. I was a news junkie. I enjoyed that other stuff there. And I had that aha moment, and then had the audacity to say, again, I don't know if I can do this as a full-time job for the Navy. I found out there's only 200 officers, but damn it, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to shadow the people, the active duty Navy officers, the handful of them in San Diego that do the job. I'm going to go figure out how they work it. I'm going to figure out how to get in this profession. I applied for a transfer into that community for the Navy. Big, heavy, bureaucratic paperwork thing you got to put back and send to DC. I got rejected once. I got rejected twice. I'm still at it until they tell me no. Third time was the charm. I got picked up, and I got sent to be a public affairs officer. And then they throw me in the deep end of the pool. I'm on an aircraft carrier forward deployed for 2 years with a staff of 7, running 4 channels of television, an FM radio station, an 8-page daily newspaper.
Let's pause, because this is beautiful, because already, and I love it when this happens, you brought so much that fits perfectly, as I paused earlier and said, this is beautiful how it happens to line up synchronistically. So this notion of what you described of this effort moment, I love it, because I see it all the time with leaders and in the space. It's like a ripening needs to happen. And I love the way you phrase that, Dave, in the vernacular. What do I got to lose? I'm not going to look at the scoreboard. And I love how that deepened, it sounds like, your commitment. And then the self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, you're talking my lingo, as you know, the mindset shifts, however you want to phrase it. And then I sense some of this is going to come back relative to what you learned for clients, because this factors out of my control. I can already tell this is something that you would say to a client potentially, as we may uncover. And then what I like, this is what I wanted to really highlight for the audience, is I haven't really talked about this that much, this concept of the energetics behind this, and we're broaching it more and more this season, is I love how once you did, whether you knew it or not, this inner reflective work, which then led you back to the baseball mound, and holy cow, I can trace this and see this
100%.
Personally. I love how then everything seems to, as the audience could tell, his story accelerated, because it's almost as if you did what most people don't do, I sense. I didn't do it the way you did it. I kind of did it the other way around, which then takes longer, I feel, because the ducks seem to have fallen in place for you, because you were like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, darn it. And how do you feel about that? I mean, in hindsight, does that resonate for you? Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And it sort of finished with the Navy, right? I had gotten to do so many different. So no, I did so many cool things that you would say, wait a minute, I'm a 29-year-old corporate communications head of a forward deployed operation with 9 ships total. And I've had maybe 4 years experience from that. People in the private sector don't get that opportunity, and they throw you in the deep end of the pool. And I'm like, screw it. What's the worst thing that can happen? I don't do a good job. I get fired. Fine. When you realize that the worst thing that can happen is that you don't succeed, that's a real empowering, at least it was for me. It's a real empowering phenomenon, because you realize, look, I can always earn a buck, right? Yeah. I can always make a living. I can always generate income to feed myself and put a roof over my head, right?
It's a huge mindset shift. Bruce Lee, I think it's Bruce Lee, real quick, brother. Bruce Lee said it this way: you have to prepare to lose before going into the fight. And I think Lao Tzu with The Art of War said something similar. You have to be prepared to lose the battle to win. It's all a mindset thing. And I love how you're bringing this out organically. Definitely.
the you know, fear is a legitimate thing and can talk you out of anything. And now, you know, so fast forward, I've had a series of missteps in the private sector. I left the Navy after the carrier job because I realized, I thought at that point, given what I thought the opportunities were in the Navy, there wasn't really anything else for me to do that I thought was fun and as empowering and sort of a learning curve. So I went into the private sector. I talked my way into a small agency to work on business PR. I couldn't even read a balance sheet or a profit loss statement, but I talked my way into it. And for the next 6 years, I did that. And then when I hung up my own shingle, you know, we were successful for a while, and then I got my ass kicked again. So, you know, now I'm in the mid 2015. I'm in about 2015, 2016. I am now 22, 23 years from getting fired on my first job on my first ship. And I'm realizing the business isn't succeeding. And because, like a lot of us in PR who did promotional stuff and media relations house, we totally missed the mark of social media influencers taking over where journalism and the mainstream medias, right? Influencer marketing took off. None of us in PR saw it. Social media agencies did. We were all still going after the traditional
more
media.
Traditional, let's say.
Yeah. And I got, you know, we were all doing a little bit of social media, but we thought it was a secondary vehicle, and we missed it when really 3-4 years before, and it became the primary vehicle. And we all woke up. I was struggling with this one. I had to retool my business. I had to lay off 3 amazing people. I gave them a big runway. I gave them about 4 months notice that I was going to break up the band and severance package, took out a big honking fat loan, and then said, I got to figure out what's next. And it took me 1.5 years to figure out that crisis communications for me was the passion that I wanted all along. But it was also,
well, you knew this. You had that notion, because in Provisors, when I knew you back in the networking scene, when we were together in that scene, I didn't know that about you.
I just didn't think it was going to be, I didn't think that there was enough business, given the fact that, again, I thought that the social media was a secondary notion. But for the reasons that it killed my promotional business, it became the way in which people now scream and shout at each other, that all of a sudden
that requires crisis PR. Yeah.
And so I kind of walked into it. But when I decided again to take the leap of faith and retool the business and focus exclusively on that, it took about 6 months for me to actually start to gain traction on that. Yeah. But I remember telling my wife, who is a dynamic and an intelligent person, but definitely is always one like, well, what happens if it doesn't work? She kept asking me that. I said, if it doesn't work, I will get a real job. I can do this, but this is what I'm passionate about. And there was a point at the end of the 6 months, like, okay, if this really doesn't work out, then I'll start shopping my resume around. And business started to pick up and I come in, and then it steamrolled since then. And I'm blessed with the people that trust me with that. But yeah, it's all about not worrying about the failure.
2 beautiful things. So let me go back a little bit, because this is something you said earlier, and it kind of made me go, tell me more. You did elaborate it in the anecdote. I want to understand more of what you meant by failure showed you not to shortchange yourself. Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I sense already, I can see that failure is an opportunity, as the old adage goes in leadership development and in the space. Talk to me about that, because that's something, I like the way you worded that. Failure for you showed you not to shortchange yourself. What do you mean by that?
Because I realized that the factors that led to me failing in the moments I did were all from within me. And they were all based on confidence and based on the preconceived notion that I was not good enough, nor was I capable enough, nor was I lucky enough to actually make something work. And I understand why, because I, like a lot of people, we get so pain averse, right? We just want to avoid pain and maximize the joy. And look, I work every day at maximizing the joy, but I'm not afraid of leaning into the pain, because I know if I learn the lessons from it and I process it and I take those as opportunities, I will never have to experience that kind of pain again. It doesn't mean I won't have those similar moments. But when those instances, when those stressors come at me, I know how to process it. I would not have been able to retool the business and do something now that I can't believe. I pinch myself. For the last 4 years, I pinched myself like, I cannot believe This is my life.
Told you it's gonna
in a
be
professional
genius, bro. We're on
I
that
was like,
call. I'm on the 405.
I-
You're telling me as I'm consulting with you for a possible thing that didn't pan out. And I said, this is genius. Mark my words. Sadegi vouch. And here we are. I love it. I love it.
Seriously. And I get to do it. I would not have had the opportunity. I would have not taken that leap of faith and not worried about whether it was going to work or not had I not been fired from my first division officer job in the Navy 28 years ago. Had I not had that moment happen and realized the path that I had been on and the failures that I'd had as a kid, right, as much as anybody else, were failures only because I didn't step up to the plate and swing the bat. And once you figure that out, there's nothing that's stopping you, because everything else is fixable. Everything else is you can modify your environment, you can change your behaviors, you can do all the other things if you just get out of your own effing way.
That's it. If ever you wanted to know what this show is about, Dave summed it up right there. Then you step into vulnerable power, as they say, unfuckability in a way. I mean, and I mean, in a more professional, in the traditional sense, they talk about 100%. It as resilience, capacity, if you don't do that. So I love this. So in a way, thank you for elaborating, because you unpacked so much more to it there too, that failure for you was a signpost to churn within and do the work within. I love that. Most people wouldn't see that. And again, it comes really beautifully. Now, losing sight of opportunities, I didn't know that about your sector. What can you say and unpack looking back in terms of, you were doing traditional PR, right? The whole industry was, and they didn't think outside the box, what we now would call innovation. Most of these industries that will exist by 2030, you've heard this, this is a stat now, don't exist. We're creating them. Crisis PR, relational alchemy, quantum light. So how can you speak to the leaders out there, having gone through this, in terms of what did you learn in terms of that short-sightedness, that lack of losing sight of the opportunities? What do you see now in terms of those that are resistant to doing it another way, right? Because everybody's like, well, I want to do it traditional because it works. How come, so what can you say on that?
Yeah, and most people, including me, in that instances, we tend to look too linear at our landscape, right? So all that time, I remember when I started the PR business, it was a lot of fun, the promotional side, because I was doing it on a performance-based model instead of a retainer model. I wanted to be incentivized for the output.
Really?
So it was a bonus structure. Oh yeah, like, hey, how many press coverage can we get? How many speaking opportunities? How many industry awards? Don't pay me a retainer, pay me a bonus. If I'm that good and my team's that good, we should have a cut at that, and we should not be afraid to hold ourselves, because it also made sure that we only took on clients we believed we could succeed with, not that we could bill a bunch of hours to. And so my focus, my tunnel vision, was to kick other PR agencies' ass. And that was my singular focus. So here along, about 2.5 years later, after I started the business, comes along Twitter, and Facebook becomes mainstream. And, MySpace had been around for a while, and that was cute, and Friendster, and yada, yada. But we're like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's really good. That should be part of the deal. There's no way, though, that people are going to look at those people that are on there and say that they're as credible, if not more credible, than, the evening newscast and the reporter for this one. They're like, that'll be good. They're centers of influence. Well, we were so wrong. And for so long, we were so wrong, until such time as these influencers came to being. And I still have people in my profession, other older people, are like, that's wrong. These people, like, what are the Kardashians got that, these people are having? Why are we following these people? Look, you don't have to like it. It's the reality of the world in which we live. And there's a time and place for that. And, it's sort of the cultural lexicon, and it'll ultimately shake out, much like the yellow journalism and the muckraking papers did in the turn of the century when the printing press costs went down, right? But to not think about that as the change agent, and looking so linear at, I'm just going to focus on my other PR firms and the traditional media, was the end of that service for me anyway, and that ability to generate enough income to feed 3 other people. So I will say that's the one lesson learned for me. And then you sort of look back at the way other people sort of thought about it the same way. What killed the Pony Express?
Right.
The Telegraph, right? What killed the Telegraph? the ability, the railways,
Innovation.
where
I mean,
people
it's
could put
nature.
letters over there, right?
Yeah.
What killed Greyhound bus? Southwest Airlines, right? When all of a sudden it became as cheap to get on a plane and fly for an hour than to take a bus and travel all day to wherever you got to go. That's,
True.
you know, those are the
Cycles.
mindsets that we had in there, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, when you get resistant because something is completely foreign and you discount it, and I get why. I did the same thing in my little world. But we tend to lose sight of that, right? And we tend to not lose the opportunity. And look, I don't mean to say that, you know, if you think that way, you're always going to be right and you're always going to be ahead of the game. Well, we're all human. We all have shortcomings. But it goes back to my point earlier, is even if I don't succeed, and I want to use that term versus failure, even if I don't succeed, but I'm trying, the lessons I'll learn will take me to a greater place. Now, I got that. Over the last, you know, it's been a great 4.5, 5 years run. Circle back 7 years beforehand. Those were sucky 2.5 years from a business standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. I got the cuts, the scrapes, the bruises, the broken bones, and the deflated ego, you know, to talk about on that.
You were cooked, marinated in that cauldron of fire, so to speak. Yeah. I love it.
Nice. I like that analogy.
That's not mine,
right?
actually.
But,
you can thank AJ Gupta, our Provisor's buddy, for that one.
Oh, no way. Is that?
Yeah.
I'm going to see him.
I'm very integritist like you. I give credit where credit's due. That's not mine.
Sweet. I love that. But guess what? I'm on the other side of it now. Yeah. I'm so glad I went through that, because the lesson that I've learned from that one has been phenomenal. And look, I'm not a masochist. Anybody who knows me, I'm not looking for pain. But was that a bad visual? But I'm telling you, sometimes with every pain comes a lesson, and that's just
I saw that. Yeah, I mean, the first 2 seasons of this show, I mean, the first one was this Dark Knight theme, which is what we would call in the more transformational space, what you're talking about, the place where nobody really, that was what the inspiration for the show. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because, you know, on the surface, you may not seem woo-woo. I love your resonance, because you've always had integrity, and then you've always really, what you see is what you get, which is what you want. And then I think that's the key word you said over and over again: fun and empowering. I want what I want to do to be fun and empowering. I think that for me is the key. That's passion. That's flow psychology, so to speak. I mean, you're basically doing what you're here to do. You're in your passion, and it's not work, it's play. And I love that about what you're all about, because you're in your essence, Dave. That's where you've unified it, as is the theme for the season for us. Yeah, that's why you're here.
I appreciate that. And look, you and I are of an age that we have way too many people that we know, right? I won't say in our lives, but that we know that are waking up today and they're miserable about their set of circumstances, because they have not believed enough themselves to take chances. I don't mean you have to be reckless, right? You don't have to be stupid with your stuff, but to not be afraid of not having things, you know, not work out, not succeed the first go around. And I love that.
Can we pause? Let me interject.
Yeah,
sorry to interject. Because this is what how do you find reckless? You say it, because I have my own verbiage, you know, based on intuition and all this, these nudges. How would you define it? If somebody's listening and going, okay, how do I know I'm not going to be nuts and throw everything I've built away? Because I've literally heard this from clients in a lot of the space. How would you define it? How did you now in hindsight define reckless versus calculated risk? Let's use the lawyer verbiage.
All right. And
sorry
and
to interject so abruptly.
No. It's a great question. We should riff on this for a while, because I'm going to give you a lawyer's response to that one. It depends, right? So
you son of a gun, you know too many lawyers.
hang with me now. So here's the deal, right? You define reckless by taking apart what it is that's most important to you. And I will tell you, you need to define it in non-material terms, right? So and for me, the recklessness is joy, right? If I am, and I tell this, I have the privilege to speak to high school students and college students in one-on-one and other group settings and mentorships, right? And I tell them, I said, look at this, you cannot sacrifice your joy and the joy of learning and the joy of exploring. And I won't take credit for it. It's a guy by the name of Bill Early. He's a longtime lawyer, longtime San Diego icon, volunteer, San Diego State University alum and supporter and leader. And he's now in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, because he and his wife wanted to raise their daughter in their open area there. And we're like, you know how cold it is there, right? But he's having the ball, he's living his best life. But I heard him one time speak to a college students, and I've always resonated about this has always resonated with me. He goes, the person with the most experiences win, right? And that for me is as important, like joy and happiness. And look, I've got some personal financial goals. Like I want to at least have this, that I know that I can always feed myself and I can always find a roof over my head, right? But I don't need a fancy car. I don't need that. But that was sort of, I didn't want to sacrifice that. I didn't want to sacrifice the joy. Those for me, when you put those on the line, for me, as I define it, that's reckless. Now, some other people may do the same thing, but I have seen where people will say, well, I need to be financially independent growing up, right? And they like have a number in their head, and it's like, I've only got 6 years to go, or 5 years to go, or 10 years to go before I hit that number. And Mark Cuban is another example, has a great line, right? The gazillionaire that he is, he goes, if you're unhappy without money, you're going to be unhappy with money.
More money, more problems. Notorious B.I.G., my generation.
It's like, again, it goes back to, I can always make a buck. And I just want to, I got people in my inner circle who wake up every morning hating their job, but going in because they feel like they have to for benefits and they have to for salary. And that is, for me, high class bullshit. I love my job.
That's reckless to me.
It is, right? But it's defined, right? And who am I to judge? But this is how I define my life. And I tell people ask me, because I'm going to be 53. They go, well, when are you thinking about retirement? I was like, retirement? F that. I just got into my game. I'm in my zone. You tell it now. I'm going to try to figure out how to do this. And when it no longer becomes my zone, maybe I'll think about that. But right now, you get retirement. Kind of like Jim. Remember Jim Moore, the coach of the Colts at one time? Playoffs? Are you kidding me? Playoffs? Like, there's no way. I'm like, if I could do this the rest of my life, and I get to hang out with cool people and hear their story and try to have people, tell people when they're in dire straits.
Your vitality is fueled. You're in passion.
Oh my God. I'm like, again, I'm pinching myself. Like, I get to do this every day. Are you kidding? This is the best life ever. But that's how I define it. So the term reckless is, what is it that is your inner, your inner joy, your inner peace, your inner happiness? And today, right? Not the futuristic potential, because you envision having a financial independence. What is it today? Do not sacrifice that. Everything else is fair game. House, car, location,
it's all negotiable
for me, right? Because you can always make it up. This isn't a zero-sum gain that you're in a calculation. This is an abundant society and world and life if we look at it differently, right? Half of the times we all get into arguments with each other because we're afraid somebody's going to take something from that. You can't take something that I can get again.
Correct.
So
I love that.
Come on.
You're speaking the lingo. And I love this. I mean, this is very much where my messaging, my branding, let's say, has landed on. It is possible to bring soul and impact, soul and making money to the business space, to the C-suite, to the both public, private, every sphere of leadership where money is. So I like that, because I think a lot of people go, especially in the new age, woo, spiritual, inner work. No, I'm going to sell out. No. And you said it earlier, you got to play the game. You referred to it in terms of the social media and the shifts. So it's like you can either be outside of it and resist these external shifts, or you can jump right in like you did in various aspects and ways you've done this. So I love it, because I think that that's what carries you forward, and you're a testament to it and how you're showing up. You're fired up.
The secret, right? And I think this is the secret to life, not just,
Ooh, everybody listen. Everybody, the guru is speaking.
Secret to life is maximize the joy in your life every day. You'll never work harder. You'll never have more fun. And oh, by the way, your business, your organization, and you will never make more money and never make more profits. And that seems to be counterintuitive to a lot of conversations. And look, there's going to be bad moments. You're not an
energetic master, because you sure sound like one, mister.
It's just, no, I'm a guy who got his ass kicked several times in his life before he woke up to it, right? I mean, look, I was 48 before I realized, and look, I had fun. I had joy. I enjoyed driving ships. I enjoyed leading people. I enjoyed being active duty U.S. Navy officer. I enjoyed working for a couple of marketing firms. I've still got great friends at the software company. I was a marketing director.
This brings you more joy, more of a refined, or let's say a higher dose of it, so to speak.
But when I figured out that I'm going to have joy and not worry about I'm not going to worry about the pain that I'm going to experience. They suck, right? They're emotional, they're draining, but I'm not going to worry about being through there because I know it's part of the journey and I will figure it out as I go along. And you lean into that. I'm telling you firsthand, man, the sooner you figure that out, the sooner life starts to make sense. And I got people close to me that are having a real tough time in their lives, in their laters. And I think part of it's just like, how did this get to be? How did I get here? And why isn't this what I thought it would be?
Bingo.
I'm sorry. My life is not what I thought it would be at 20. It's flipping better.
We plan, God laughs, brother. And then, we got all these, I mean, like, you're the classic. Every time when I was coming up and even before my sabbatical, doing all the inner branding work at a more, let's say, executive level, I remember, I mean, it's so the par for the course, the hero's journey, that I fell in my lap, or, I landed in it. And you said the same thing. They put you into PR and then Navy, and then boom, it was, so to speak, ordained synchronicity. Yeah. So talk to us about crisis PR. I love this because you've peppered so much wealth, and then literally you even brought in what quantum physics has proven, joy, gratitude, love. These are high vibrational energies. If you don't live with the gunk, you kind of, let's say like a corn, you get the chaff off and then you're more purified. So yeah, you're more vitalized. And now flow psychologists are showing us that. Then your EKGs and your all this, and all the data then supports empirically, oh, that's why the knock on wood, the 53-year-old son of a gun looks more energized than he was when he was 30, because he's actually revitalizing himself at a very pure battery energetic level. So that's, I mean, science corroborates that. I love that. So what's crisis PR, bro? What's crisis PR?
So this is where people
PR? First, what the heck is PR for the rubes in the room like Haas?
Yeah.
We've never actually had to use it. I've had clients I've consulted with you on. If I'm a newbie, which I kind of am, what's PR before you take us to this novel baby you've birthed through that's now hot, and I've seen other people use it now, so it's becoming a thing.
Yeah, totally. So PR in a nutshell,
yeah,
right, is other people talking about you that have no vested interest in your outcome. So you're not paying them. They're not buying stuff from you, but they've got a series
so they're
of,
not
and we've
paying.
used the term,
so not promoters. So that's what it is not. Okay.
Right. So because then that would be what you would call advertising or marketing, right? That's a differentiator. There's a difference. Yeah, we used to call it back in the day. We say PR is earned media, and then there's paid media. So if you pay for the privilege of getting access to an audience group, right, that's not PR.
That's
advertising.
Got it.
And ads now take a whole lot of flavor forms, from digital ads and retargeting and also, but you're paying for that privilege.
Okay.
PR is basically building relationships where somebody thinks you're cool because you either have the same cultural value or you focus in the same area, and they're just like, we want to talk to you, and we want to sing your praises, and that's essentially PR. It's building those relationships, right? But concurrently, they're also the ones that will criticize you or talk about the not so good things you do. And there's no way to really control that. You can't buy your way out of that situation through advertising, things like that, right? Now you could try to have an equal footing if it's bad enough with advertising, but ultimately my job is to help convey your narrative, your side of the story, in a truthful, empathetic, and action-oriented way. This is sort of the crisis PR. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to convince everybody that they were wrong about their perception of you.
He's an angel.
I'm going to give you. Oh, he's not, because look, even if the claims or the accusations are completely unfounded, right? Haters are going to hate. I put a YouTube video up of 3 kittens playing with a ball of yarn. I'm going to get 1,000 thumbs up, and I'm going to get 5 down checks. I don't know what in the hell are those 5 people's problems in life, right? But maybe you got to do some self-evaluation.
Kittens, love them.
But I'm going to get haters, right? And that's just the way it is. And fine, that's your negative world.
Your control, as you said earlier.
I'm like, go ahead and do that. But my job is to help them, give them some space in order to get themselves to a situation where they can fix the problem, get back to normal operations, and try to find out what the root causes are. Even if the root causes are are misinformation or a lack of information. I got an organization out of New York right now that's getting chirped at by a nonprofit that's making some false claims or taking some things grossly out of context. But the fundamental issue, and we prepared for that and everything is good with this organization. But one of the things I told them is you need to get a digital marketing firm in here that can help you promote your own words, because you got tens of thousands of social media followers and you may post a couple times a month. You have a website that makes you not look like from New York, but from, some remote area in the Rust Belt. And I don't mean to denigrate anything like that, but it's not conducive to your audience. You're looking
right. It's not resonant. It doesn't match what they're trying to do.
And you need to build that up. You need to invest in that because you're letting somebody else define the narrative for you. And so, that's what I do. And the killer thing for me is sort of getting back to this whole concept of this podcast and this episode is you got to take people out of their comfort zone to be a little bit introspective. Even in cases where the accusations are completely false, there's always lessons to be learned about how you can do things better, even if it's just communicate more effectively. And I try to bring that in when I have a consultation with a client, because your knee-jerk reaction when you're being, when somebody's unfairly calling your integrity into question is to argue back and forth, be as animated and aggressive. And
I've been there.
And right, we all do, right? It's
fight nature, fire right? With fire.
Right. And what you do is you just elevate the animosity and the anxiety. The crisis continues, conflict, and it just, you're not responding. So I always tell people the two cardinal rules in a crisis communications response plan is expressing empathy and action. Doesn't mean you have to admit culpability if none is to be made, but you have to acknowledge, hey, we hear you. We appreciate you bringing this up here. Here's the reality, and here's what we're going to do about it. But we're wanting to work with you on this one. We appreciate it. Are they going to accept it? Maybe, maybe not. But you're telling everybody else in your circle that you meet, that you're taking it seriously and take it for action. And guess what? If you've built up a solid culture and people like what you're doing, by and large, they will come to your aid. They will come to your support. And that's the case with the organization in New York right now. When we've had the response from there, they've had some really good supporters that have come to them.
Is that like kind of another way of saying it? I mean, you did kind of say how cool colloquially. It sounds like you make somebody that's kind of been less likable or tarnished, so to speak, kind of regain their luster, so to speak. You make
them human, right?
I love that. Ooh, that's vulnerable.
You make them human, right? You make them relatable, and you make them human, which is then makes them likable, right?
So this is good because we've covered the good. Yeah. That's, you had to go through the bad side of leadership to get to the good. And now, folks, we're talking about what we're both really stoked on, even more so, dealing with this ugly side of leadership. So you're using the E word, empathy, which ties to the V word, vulnerable. So talk to me here, because before we hit record, you said these words and I was like, Dave, this is the woo-woo magic language. I create a safe space, Haas, for them to go in and do this, which we call shadow work in this woo-woo space, inner, shamanism, however you want to look at it, inner psychology. It's looking at the gunk, looking at the underbelly, the things, the ugly side of leadership, and then making it relatable. And then again, how does that not curtail, like you're talking about, we'll get to, it'll make you lose business, it'll affect your market traction, your consumer base, blah, 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 which we'll unpack a little bit, which is why you do what you do to help them out of these messes. So talk to me about that. What's the role of vulnerability, empathy, the safe space language? Unpack that, because I take it that's what you really love about what you do, in addition to practical.
Without question. The key with empathy is being relatable to the people who are taking pot shots at you. Like, keep this in mind, right? The overwhelming reason why people shout,
in general, in terms of them.
The overwhelming reason why people are shouting and screaming at you online is because they feel voiceless, they feel disenfranchised, they feel disconnected, helpless in some respects. And it might not be you, right? It just might be life in general. It's so overwhelming, but they are. And if you don't at least acknowledge that you hear them and that you're listening to what they say, even if you don't agree with it, that speaks volumes to people who go, okay, somebody understands what I'm trying to convey. And then in a way to say, look, there's been some disconnects here. We're going to figure this out. We're going to try to correct, at least in some respects, how we're communicating with you about what we're doing. and then follow it up with action. These are the three things we're going to do to make sure that you understand. Again, none of that means you have to admit fault when no fault is to be made. I mean, if there is, let's do it that one. Let's say you messed up. Let's say there's you didn't do something right by your employee standards. A customer didn't get what they were supposed to get. Your product yield, your fulfillment, you had an issue with that. Something happened on your watch. None of us hit it out of the park every day. Again, going back to the baseball analogy, none of us are stellar all the time. We're all human beings. Own it, right? And own it quickly. Hey, we're sorry. And then the action is, here's what we're going to do to fix it. And you will keep things at bay and reduce the chances of something just cascading forever. But it means, getting back to sort of the vulnerability of this, you have to be a little bit open and transparent. And there's a whole lot of reason people don't do that. Again, we're naturally pain avoidance, right? Yes. We really want to avoid that at all costs, even if delaying that just means it gets paid later on with
more detriment,
significant interest, right?
Yeah, more loss.
I get it. The other thing is that you have to recognize that pain always has a lesson, and if you can get through that, I tell people sometimes, look, I'm not here to try to make this. Oh, and people say too, just to finish the thought.
No, this is beautiful. Much application, conflict resolution, leadership, and it's crisis PR. I mean, this could be applied for leaders listening everywhere. Keep going. It's beautiful.
No disrespect. Yeah. So, they say, oh, I'm naturally pain avoidant, but also lawyers are saying, look, you do this, here's the exposure level, right? Here's the litigation. Here's the lawsuits that will happen for that. And I'm like, look, and I get that, and there's always a cost benefit analysis, but if you're going to delay it for the purposes of avoiding risk, you're likely to lose these customers. You won't have a business to come back to, period. Yeah. End of story. That'll be an academic exercise to avoid litigation when your business is BK and you're filing Chapter 7 for liquidation. That's the reality of this. If you open up just a little bit, most people will all of a sudden look at you as being human and relevant, and can empathize with you as to what you're doing. And oh, by the way, they'll give you the opportunity to then take action, to follow up, and to fix whatever the issue is, even if it's just miscommunication. You better damn well do it, right? You better follow up with the action, so don't give lip service, but you'll get that chance to do so. And that's what I do on a regular basis.
I love that, because you owning it quickly, radical personal responsibility. I mean, so much with the leadership stuff that I do, teamwork that I do. And God rest his soul, our brother, I know you do a lot of blood donations to cancer. We lost Darren Cecil, God rest his soul, fellow provisor's mate. And he taught me what you're talking about. I mean, it was brutal. It knocked me on my ass.
I miss that guy.
Yeah, he's a dope guy, God rest his soul. We'll dedicate this episode because I know cancer is a big one for you. So, and we're going to do a case study. So Dave's going to actually use me as the guinea pig today, and we're going to come up with a fun curveball that's based on the actual client. So he's going to get more granular. So God rest your soul, Darren. Darren used to say this to me in terms of the sales psychology, the proverbial dark arts of influence. And again, this is using this for good, for impact, not for nefarious purposes. As you can tell, this man here is very integritous, and this is why he's on the show, because your industry, I can tell we're not going to get into it again, not to denigrate. There's a lot, like my industry, my former full-time industry. There's a lot of bad actors that spoil the bunch. So Darren used to say, and it is human nature. I love how this is what's coming up for me. He taught that human nature is such that if I'm not okay, you're going, how did he teach it? The whole goal is, correct me if I'm wrong, is if I'm feeling bad, I'm likely to make you feel bad. And that's that whole conflict escalates and don't fight fire with fire. Now, if I open up vulnerable, and I actually make you feel that I'm not okay, it's very Maslow, psychological based. You're going to jump in. So is that that's what, God rest his soul, that's what makes me think of, is that kind of the underpinning of the psychology underlying, and it's authentic. You make yourself relatable. They're going to be like, oh shit. And I don't want to be a schmuck who's hitting somebody who's down. Is that more or less the psychology of what's happening behind the scenes?
I think it's more of I would modify it slightly. I'm not looking at, because I think people will, unfortunately, because of their own insecurities and their own faults, if somebody thinks that you're just vulnerable and they can kick you on the way down, I'm afraid people will do that on social media. And I think it's because that they're so consumed with their own fear and anxiety. But what you do is you create a space where you are able to not only open up about yourself, but say, look, we get why you're feeling the way you are, right? I get it. Hey, look, we probably could have done a better job with this. So you acknowledge their fear and insecurities. You recognize your own issues with helping, with part of that, at least by default, if not by design, and say, let's fix this, right? And that builds the trust back. That builds the safe space for whomever's disparaging you, because they say, you understand my pain, and now you're letting me a little insight about your pain for that, right? It's like when two people are arguing about something, like two kids arguing, and it's like, yeah, I'm sorry I said that. I was feeling this way. And what happens, especially if they're two good friends, the other person say, well, I also didn't do this right. I'm really sorry, but we got off on the wrong foot, right? You're kind of doing that on a big macro PR, PR schedule.
You create hug it out moments between companies in the public and private sector.
Right. Or in the case where the company, the organization, the nonprofit, the government, whoever I've got the privilege to work for, did do something wrong, own it. Like, hey,
which is going to be our case study. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We screwed up. We did this, like, my bad. And I want to reach out to you and apologize. Right. And you do that quickly, because people will feel that you're genuine, you're authentic. And then they'll also remember about the time that they inadvertently did that to somebody else, and you get a moment to do that. So it's all part about just being open and being confident that you can get through it. And I understand, right? The default to that fight or flight mode comes when when you look at it from a position of fear and scarcity, right? I can't do this because I'm going to lose all of this. If you do it that way, it's a guarantee you're going to lose all of this. Yeah. Right. And it's there. And yeah, I got examples galore on that.
So this is funny. So Dave set himself up 2 days ago. He went to PF Chang's, which has a very sentimental spot for me, because it's PF Chang's. As I texted him, hey bro, that's the PF Chang's I used to go with my brother who passed away, and I met a girlfriend there who worked there. So he got a fortune cookie that he had the audacity to put online, and he's not that woo openly. And it said, what, Dave? Can you read it to more?
Yeah, I got to look at it just to make sure I quote it verbatim. But I was laughing because I was with a longtime friend. She's an amazing person. She's the CEO of a hospice company that just truly does God's work, and she's just a genuinely good soul. Here it is. And the fortune cookie at PF Chang's ran, soon others will need your leadership and inspiration, which I laughed. And
coming on the show 2 days later to talk about deep dive into how to inspire leaders.
Because I said I feel the same way. Like, I'm going to need somebody like that. Okay, so here's another thing. So I'm big into Rotary, right? So I was at my Rotary meeting today. I'm the past president of the club, which means I get to do all fun stuff now. I don't have to like stand up there. Well, we had a sing along with 120 of us in the room, and it was the first line and then the chorus of Lean On Me. So lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend and I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long before I'm going to need somebody to lean on, right? So it's this all shared sort of thing. That was the song that we did today. And here we are talking about this sort of stuff there. Was not my doing, right? I didn't pick the song. Somebody else picked it for me.
It's as if the universe is going to speak to you, buddy. You're going to run away from it. It's going to find you. It's like Al Pacino says in Godfather 2, no matter where you go, they pull you back in.
Yeah, just when you thought you were out, they pull me back in, right? But this goes back to what we've been talking about, right? If you're more vulnerable and empathetic, whether it's in crisis PR or in business or in life, right? And you achieve, as you talked about, right? In the quantum physics, you achieve this energy level that you at least are there more often than not, right? Everybody has a down day, everybody has a bad day. But what happens is if you're purposeful in that, right? The negative energy that somebody tries to throw at you, like in close circles, and it not only will hit, but you will repel that more often than not. And look, it may change how you live your life or with whom you live your life. Like, I get it, but I will tell you, if you're going to achieve whatever our purpose is here in life before we move on to next, and I'm not a religious guy, but I think I'm a spiritual guy.
Bro.
You move on to something next there. Go. These are the lessons that you learn in life, in your profession, in business, and whatever. I'm here to tell you, I'm starting to figure it out, right?
I love it. I mean, and you mentioned it. I mean, you are a Rotarian and you've been leadership positions all around. And yeah, you highlight a theme to, I say, together we're rising. I think the old adage is, with a rising tide, all boats rise. And it's very altruistic. Again, you know, on surface, well, if you're watching this episode and you're a regular and you go PR, and then you'll know now, an hour or some odd in, why he's on this show, because of his essence, his resonance. And that's one of my, I guess, one of the things I've seen, you know, not to judge, you said it earlier, is you can't judge that proverbial book by the cover, because people have a certain idea of what it's supposed to look like. And to be a, you know, a new inspired leader, the future of leader, future fit. There's so much verbiage out there, conscious leadership and etc. For me,
100%.
it doesn't matter. Tomato, tomato. It's what's the energy. So I love that, because you're already addressing what I think encapsulates what a Rotarian is inspired leadership. And I love your humility, bro, to receive it as well.
I appreciate that. You know, I'm trying to tell that with other folks too. And the other thing is that before you start, you know, what's the old adage? Before you enter something in life and you're pointing, you point one finger. You know, the old adage: you point one finger at somebody and blame. Right? There's three pointing right back at you. I'm not saying that you take on fault when it's not yours to take on there, but look introspective first on how to change the situation. Even to change the situation for you is to leave the situation, right? Is to leave whatever the negative situation is, right? My responsibility here is I need to extricate myself from this environment because it's unhealthy, because it's not there. Somebody is mired in their own crap and they're trying to have me absorb it. And again, you achieve that higher element, you're just repelling that all day long.
I love that.
And I think that's important.
Take the high road. They go low, we go high. What's up? So I want
Michelle.
I'm tempted to jump right into the case study. There is something that popped into my field. Well, that popped in that is a cause. On the first couple of seasons, I especially want to highlight causes people care about. And this popped in. I'm very intuitive, and I go through, you know, more off the, let's say, improvised, inspired. And it dropped in, and I'd forgotten this about you. I mean, some of the regulars may not even know this. If you've seen the first two seasons and however many 20 some odd episodes, I have a human rights legal background, and I studied some of this stuff. This thing that's near and dear to you and that I'm very passionate about is this concept of sex trafficking, which has been a historically very pervasive issue. I mean, slavery's been around, this form of sex slavery, so to speak. And it does tie to the very topic as it dropped in, and I texted you, is this all right if we talk about this? And I appreciate you being game and with the theme of let's deep dive. This is very much an ugly side of leadership. And it will correlate to the, funny enough, again, another funny synchronicity and how it all ties together to the case study that we're going to do, and this intersect of taboo and PR. And so I'm curious, what have you seen? Because you're on the border, and I had a teacher who taught me very advanced stuff. I mean, this is not conspiracy. This is raw stuff. That's the underbelly, the ugly side of society. And leaders now are getting caught up in it. They're getting embroiled in it. Some, unfortunately, in what's happening, this underbelly of society. So talk to us about that. What is happening in a very short amount of time? We won't get too much into it. What have you seen? What's happening? What do people need to be aware of? And you know, this is something that not very many people want to talk about. It's a very icky, gruesome thing to talk about. Unfortunately, it's sad.
So there's always a concept that you know, the world's oldest profession is a victimless crime. But the thing that I would hope the audience here would understand is that in terms of that, human sex trafficking is a situation in which the victim, right, the victim of human sex trafficking is not, and I call it a victim, is done so because they are coerced through fraud or force into the lifestyle that they have in there. This is not by choice, and oftentimes the trafficker, who, at least here in Southern California, have a lot of ties to gangs, are groomed, if you will, as early as 10 years old. The average age is 16. 80%, by the way, are U.S. citizens. A lot of I live in San Diego, as you know, and a lot of them will think, oh, it's a border issue, it's a smuggling issue. No, it's not. It's literally groomed out of the public and private. Private schools are just as vulnerable through these devices.
It gets ugly. I mean, there's a lot of dark rabbit holes that we won't get into. I mean, how certain systems foster, may funnel into it, etc. My point is, talk to us about then Why don't people, real quick, sorry to interject your flow, why don't people want to talk about it? Or why is this, I mean, we've touched upon it in other ways. Why are we, I know it's a pain issue, we've talked about it that way. Why are people so reticent to talk about the taboo? Like, I don't want to talk about that some of the porn stars, that porn is so pervasive in our society, some of them, if I'm not mistaken, I'm learning these days, are sex trafficked. Is that not true? And you think, oh, she may actually know she was groomed, as Dave is pointing out, from a very early age. So this is more icky and more pervasive in our life than we want to admit. Why don't we want to talk about it?
I think we don't want to talk about it because it speaks so much to the dark inner workings of our brains sometimes, right? And I look, like, it's just, you know, there's parts of us, and I don't mean to suggest that the majority of people on here engage in anything like that, right? But we've all had, you know, I shouldn't say we've all, but a lot of people, more people than you want to admit, have had fleeting thoughts about that, or have checked out a site, or have gone into a club or things like that.
Temptation,
right?
Yeah.
And so to speak to that, to do that hits very much to the fear, and to the fear that we have about it, about how we've at least,
what does that mean about me as a person if I look at this?
And it's scary stuff, right? And also I think it's somewhat of a legacy of our society, right? I mean, if you talk about that, there was times where it was a rite of passage where, you know, a older brother, or I remember in the military, like, you bring in the new guy, where's the first place you go? Go to strip club, right? And
there's cultural rights, so to speak.
And until you sort of figure out that, wait a minute, you know, there's a belief that there's a mutual consent, right, to be in there, to having them perform, the performers being there, you being there, and things like that, till I was basically caught square in the eye with it at a youth camp that my Rotary Club put on there, where one of the high school juniors who was up there in this camp bravely came forward and said she was a survivor. And I won't get into the story because it's horrible, but she is doing incredibly well now, and on her journey, and has processed a lot of trauma. But when I was faced with that at this youth camp that was just, you know, a bunch of high school kids, I woke up to the reality that this scourge has been hidden in plain sight. So I've been able and fortunate enough to try to create some educational programs within Rotary, and have, through the generosity of so many different members, create some training programs for teachers and students, or at least promulgate from that. I'm launching a couple of initiatives through the San Diego County District Attorney's Office to try to get more businesses that are involved with that, both in the survivor services, so
and prevention,
trying to teach survivors financial literacy and job training. But you're right, prevention. The 5-year plan is getting more businesses to be mentors to at-risk young people here, to recognize that they are loved and valued for who they are as individuals, and not because somebody on a social media app is telling them whether you're pretty. And I know you don't probably hear that a lot, and shower them with gifts and pretend to be their boyfriend or girlfriend, and then that's how the coercion starts. And it's a slow process that the exploiters know too well. And by the way, a little empathy toward the exploiters. A lot of the exploiters were also victimized.
Hurting people.
Vein,
yeah,
right. It's kind of the same thing. Like people who were abused as a child become abusers as adults, right? That's the sick, twisted psychological mess that people find themselves in.
Ugly.
When they're groomed in that way.
They call it collective shadow work. There's a colleague, Thomas Hubel, I've given him a shout out before. I don't know him personally. I very much appear.
Yeah.
And it's collective trauma healing, intergenerational stuff. There's a lot of fanciful names around it, all wrapped up for me simplistically.
Totally.
We're all one energy, and we share this. And as you put, it's just been in our culture as a globe. And it's something that when we have to look, and it's very much the nature of the case study we're going to dive into right now, and the work that you do, and what you've already highlighted over this last hour, which is you got to look at this stuff. Don't run from it. And I'm really glad that you've presented not about this topic, unfortunately, leading up to it, because it's the same theme. It seems like that it's something that collectively, it's the ugly side of our society. We have to look at it. And it is not pretty. I mean, my soul sister who trained me 2 years ago, she met with, I'm presuming, some of the similar people, like the sheriff of, she named, I mean, Chula Vista. Oh yeah, I know Chula Vista. I have a gem store and a soul sister. I go to meditation work down there. And she said some of the grooming and some of the very intensive, 100%. Dark as young as 8, 6, very young ages, men and women, and then love what you said, brother. It's forgive them for they know not what they do, is this notion of it's hurt people hurting people. And I love this notion of the best thing I've ever seen in society, Dave, is the South Africa Tribunal, where they didn't, the Truth Commission, they didn't look, we need something like this more and more in the world. I think Dave Chappelle even joked about it in one of his Netflix comedies, a few before he needed Dave, before he needed
right,
Dave,
right,
more than before. Yeah. He actually talked about this in this way, if my memory serves me, that we need something without blaming anybody, without saying, look, let's bring all the silos, the coyotes, the people that buy them, the yachters, and there's so much, this gets real dark real quick.
Yeah, we'll get to the case study, but just to give you an example about that in action, right? So there's a foundation here locally in San Diego. I'm not affiliated with it, but I know the executive director. It's called TKF Foundation, and it's based on the incident that happened where a young 20-year-old was shot and killed by a 15-year-old gang member. And the father of the deceased realized through his grief at the death of his young and promising son, who was on a promising career, that the kid who was influenced by the gangs was as much a victim as everything else. He had said, I realized that there were victims on both sides of that gun. And he reached out to the grandfather of the assailant, who, by the way, was tried as an adult and was going to serve a lifetime, was going to jail for life. He said, we have to break this cycle. You and I together, let's form this foundation. Let's teach nonviolence in kids. Let's break them apart there. And here's the other thing, that father of the deceased and the foundation advocated for the release of the assailant who killed their son. And he's now the assailant, who now was released on parole, given parole for his work, is now 40-something-year-old, and he's working for the foundation.
That's beautiful.
I mean, it's
what happens after the bad guy's gone? I mean, we can blame people all we want. Like you said, that's the basis of shadow work, inner work. You point one finger, 3 point back. There's no point to blame anybody. Let's solve the problem. Let's be proactive.
And look, there's political implications to that I don't want to get into, right? Yeah. But in a broad sense, the idea that we don't live in gray areas, right? I heard that too. Like, we don't live in black and white. We live in gray, right? Is so important in my profession as a crisis PR person, as well as I think in life and how we lead and how we interact with people, is we've got to at least see the other perspective. It doesn't mean you have to give it equal weight. It certainly doesn't mean you have to pay homage to it, but you have to recognize it, because ultimately that's where the solutions lie. Correct. And that's what I do for most of my conversations with clients.
I love that. Yeah, I was in Hollywood, and I was with a very high profile, let's call him networking partner, and he had a gal who was part of a sex cult. And what I was, I asked her, can I do some work on you? And I was starting to get deeper into understanding what my real skill set is, so to speak. And I said, you need to have compassion. I didn't say need, because I didn't force it down her. I'm saying it loosely now.
I get you.
The gist of what I said was, let's have compassion for the cult leader. Let's call him that. And how dare you? And I mean, all we're going to do is we're going to create another cycle of vilification, which is then going to make them hide more, which is, wait, what happened with the Me Too movement? Oh, wait, it didn't really solve anything. Then the players hid more. So, so let's go to our, when the good inadvertently goes ugly. And by the way, can you email me some of what you're up to with the cause, with the sex trafficking? If anybody listening, if you want to get involved, learn more about it, is that okay? We'll put it in the description, as well as Dave's other stuff, his website and all that. Is that okay? Because this is something that's near and dear for me at a very spiritual level, because of my lifetimes of being a victim and a perpetrator in other lives. Let's put it at that. I've been the good guy and the bad guy. And today,
I'm grateful for you, brother.
And today, when the good inadvertently goes ugly, so let's say you're listening. Let's say you're full woo-woo like me, and you're a conscious business owner, a visionary entrepreneur. You're a spiritual guru, which is really the curveball I wanted to throw Dave. He sent me a fact pattern. He's like, Haas, I've actually dealt with a situation. And I was like, Dave, let's make this more woo-woo. So, gurus in time immemorial that have been working in intimacy, and especially when they work around the opposite fair sex, they get accused of things. Both sometimes they do it, and sometimes it's the good inadvertently goes wrong. Should not have done the Larry David and rubbed your shawl to see the material. Oops. So today's case study, let's get into character. So I'm going to come to you. We haven't really prepped this. If everybody is expecting some script to happen, no.
Bring it.
Ring, 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 ring. Dave.
Hey.
It's Haas.
Haas.
Dave, you know, I'm
What's
the
going on? You sound
CEO
stressed,
of this
dude.
healing conglomerate I've started. You know, I do tantric coaching, which if you're listening and you don't know what that is, Dave, I do sexual intimacy work, people showing them how to become more open, especially if they've been traumatized, they've been, you know, dealing with stuff. And you wouldn't believe this. This lady I worked on 10 years ago, she went to the papers and the paps have started to come asking around. They're accusing me of sleeping with her. It's worse. They're saying I did it in a bunny costume and I'm into cosplay. This is bad. This is really bad. My integrity is at issue. They're going to think I'm even more loony because, as you know, Dave, the woo-woo is already reputational harm. What do I do, Dave? Where do we start? I need you, man. I'm scared and I'm shitting bricks.
And so the first thing I always say is, man, I'm sorry you're going through that. I can hear the stress in your voice.
I don't even like bunnies. I don't even like bunnies.
I get it. I totally get it. All right. Tell me, what is your relationship with this person? Like, tell me, let me hear it. How did you get to this relationship?
I'm married, Dave. Dave, I'm married, man. I'm married.
No, I get it.
I don't know. I mean,
I'm not asking
one thing led to another. She stayed over and there was some fooling around. We didn't sleep together. And I don't know. I mean, it was consensual. It doesn't look good for me because she was a student. And I know I crossed the line, and by the time I caught myself, it was, you know, it's too late. We had already kind of crossed a certain boundary, man. I mean, we were already kind of naked. I mean, what do you want me to tell you? The bunny thing, that whole thing, I don't know what that's coming from. That's out of left field, man.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But look, and look, glass houses, I've learned long ago, I live in a glass house. I don't keep stones around here, right? So let me just tell you what I'm thinking. You make a believable story in talking about that. All the things that she said about the bunny costume and all that's not true. But I think you'd be well served to sort of come clean about the relationship as it was.
Tell and the reason truth, like all of it. We're not even going to kind of skew it.
Here's the thing, right? I mean, you don't have to go through all the details, right? But I will tell you, you're more believable if you walk in and say, look, this isn't what all of these things that she says not true, but I acknowledge that I had an inappropriate relationship and I apologize to my family. I apologize to her. I apologize to other people for that, because you're going to get so many more people who will say, there but for the grace of God go I. And here's the other side of it too, because I'm worried about the risk. If you were to go out there with a statement vehemently denying,
that's what I want to do, man. I mean, my ego is flaring up a little bit, and I know I'm supposed to be spiritual. Velvet glove encased, or iron glove encased in velvet is what I want to do, and put the smack down divinely.
I get it. Here's the thing: if somebody else comes around, because this person's already talked to other friends and all that, and said, yeah, but here I've got these 3 text messages, or I've got these 3 phone calls, or I've got these 3 messages.
What about if the nature of my work is very intimate? I didn't do anything. Do you mean this can snowball? It can get worse before it gets better?
It'll kill you. Because here's the thing. If you were to go and vehemently deny, and there's an ounce of the truth that comes out based on what you said from somebody else, your credibility is shot.
What could happen?
You're going to close down.
What's my risk here?
You're going to close down.
You think so?
You're gonna
how can this spread? I mean, the paparazzi's here. I'm hearing she's gonna probably go to the LA Times, and that may get spread to the AP. So all right, man. So first step, all right, I'm gonna have to sleep on this, and I think I can really do the inner work necessary to put my ego aside and come clean. So what do we do? What do we gotta do on the more 3D level, the nuts and bolts? How do we attack this, so to speak? How do we get proactive about this?
I think what we do is we would put out a statement to 3 people right away, right?
Okay.
And I would even suggest to you might want to do a quick video vignette that we put on your social media. But it's we give a statement to the press,
okay,
a video vignette on your social media, and a direct outreach to all of your clients, both past and current, to the extent that you've got that.
Whoa, slow down. You want me to then go unopen Pandora's box and then let them? Why are we going to do that, Dave?
Because if you don't,
What's
they're
the
going to come after
utility?
you when the little note. If you don't, you're going to come after you like a vengeance when somebody else tells the narrative for you. And let me tell you too, I think if somebody else tells the narrative, the amount of other stories and false facts that they'll tack onto it will be even greater, and it'll be almost impossible for you to get around it. This is a pay me now
I
or
don't
pay
want
me
that
later
to
strategy.
happen.
I get it. I get it. I'm here to tell you this is going to suck. I'm just trying to make it suck less, and I'm trying to give you an opportunity to keep your business at
What do
least
I
on
do to
some
my
level.
people?
That you
What
can,
do I tell my people? Because I got a lot of women that work for me. I don't want them to get worried or get skittish or create HR problems. So what do I do with my internal? So that's extra.
be
What do I do
straight.
internally? Should I
Be
do
straight
anything
up.
at all?
Be straight up with them. Tell them exactly what you're going to tell the public. You have to, because they're your first line of communications. They're the ones who are talking to your clients. They can have your back if you are as vulnerable with them as you are with your client base and the general public. And I think that they will also understand you because they work with you day in and day out. They know what good person you are, right? We all got our fallacies. And I'm here to tell you the pain will be less and you'll have a chance to restore your reputation and restore your business because you're that way. Look, I'll give you so many different examples of this one from so many different levels, right? The Larry Ellisons of the world who have gone through several different iterations and other people like that. Brilliant people, brilliant strategists, brilliant technologists from that when were able to keep their job amidst the shareholder backlash because
That's true.
they opened up for that, right? The times that Larry Ellison doesn't have that, the time Larry Ellison really gets trouble is when he gets arrogant, right? Like he can. From this
You're right. Now, what if they have me on the news and they want to ask me specific questions about what happened? I mean, shit. I mean, it seems like you want me to write a tell-all at this juncture. What do I do there?
I don't
How do I
necessarily
make
think
sure, Dave, that I don't give them ammunition to then shoot me with in my vulnerability?
I don't think we have to accept that you're going to do on-air interviews or things like that. I think
So
we
don't
submit
do
the
that?
statement, we
So
put
reject.
that there, but
Okay.
put it out there
Respectfully
in
didn't
general.
reject.
Be as open and forthright for that. Now, we'll take the next stage as it comes. If there's lawsuits pending, if there's other investigations, we may change that story. But right now, I think there's a real good opportunity that if you're candid and forthright up at the beginning about the scenario from that, the news interest will wane. We'll see what happens with the next iteration from that. But I will tell you, if you don't respond in these ways, if you're vehemently denying, there's going to come a point when something else comes out that you're going to have to go on television. You're going to have to go on the news. You're going to have to be interviewed live. And they're going to ask you all of these gory details that are going to be even more uncomfortable. Yeah.
Last
I'm
question,
serious.
Dave. Then, all right.
Please.
I think I love your crisis PR guru strategy. It really resonates with me. Then, last question. At any point in time, can I get my version out there? Because this is like, I want it to be cathartic. I mean, it's like, when can I tell what my side of it was? Is there ever going to be an opportunity for that?
I think there could be. The question is are you doing an exercise in semantics or not? Like, are you going to be trying to assuage your own concerns? And does it look like you're really trying to justify all of your actions? Look, let's call
my
it
ego
like
flaring up
right?
again. You're right. You're
Like,
such a
let's
guru.
call it in there. You had an inappropriate relationship with a client, right? Let's call it like it is. Am I saying you're as human as the rest of us? Absolutely, my friend. But if you're trying to justify those actions because you want to do a tell-all in detail, maybe she was the one who was open to that. Maybe she even suggested it right away, right? I don't need to know that. It's really between you and her. But if you're trying to then put that all out there, it's going to look like you're victim shaming. It's going to look like you're trying to justify it.
Backfire.
And it's only going to cascade. Own it. Own your role and responsibility in this one. And guess what? I think people will understand it because everybody lives in the glass house. Now, here's the thing. Are you going to have everybody like saying, you know what, you're a good guy and it's all good and it's all understandable? No, haters are going to hate.
I want people to like me, Dave.
And I want half the people to give you the opportunity to do that. If half the comments on social media and all that are like, give the guy a chance, there before the grace of God, that's my litmus test, right?
Okay.
Haters are going to hate. You got that there, but at least give you a foundation by which you can restore the trust back to there. Because I'll tell you what, the other angle of this, the other side of this, if you go the route that you think so, it's going to be quite ugly.
I guess what you're saying to me, Dave, is if I'm vulnerable, I can reclaim my power. Let's do
100%.
it, Dave.
100%.
And I've seen.
No,
Like,
but and that's well, and you talked about that. That's based on a real life example.
yeah,
Of
I
something
know.
I
And
worked on just about a
he's
year ago.
had clients like this today. Again, factually, the day we recorded this, the Gravity CEO was telling Dave, a poster child of the conscious, how you should be a CEO, is accused of something similar. So this is real scenarios that Dave's dealt with, and these doesn't have to only relate to sexual impropriety, so to speak. Dave, my man, I think we have covered things that I didn't know we were going to unpack, which usually these episodes are. If there's any final things to put a bow on it for today, in terms of what you do, leaders listening, takeaways, anything that kind of pops in inspired. If nothing, that's fine too. Either or.
There is nothing in this world from which you can't recover if you're just a little bit more vulnerable and open and assured in yourself that you can get through it. And I mean that. Nothing. Look, and it may take the rest of your life, depending on how bad it is, but I will tell you, nothing is more important than the inner peace in doing that.
I love that. And it seems like on a practical note too, that in what you said on a strategy, it comes through is, and it seems common sense now in terms of your industry, sometimes the best at proactive action is no action, and to let things tide over. In terms of like dealing with a PR crisis, because it seems like what you were advising me in that scenario, and it is, I mean, part of my nature, I was coming genuine, not to also be the devil's advocate, that yeah, part of my nature is, well, I want them to know the full truth, the equity. I'm a lawyer,
100%.
and I like that because I had a close family member in that celebrity space, and what he did, his PR team was similar to what you advised, and it's a very much like you gotta let it tide over. So I wouldn't have thought that, in other words. So it hit home that sometimes the best action is no action and let it roll over. Yeah.
People are pain avoidance, right? And so they'll try to avoid pain, even that means to counter it and only extend the pain, or do that there. And so it's an art as much as science, but you have to go into what is it we're trying to do? How do we get back to normal operations? And sometimes the best action is to let it go, take the punch, or be a little vulnerable up front, because if you're not, that punch is going to hurt more down the road. I promise you.
I love that. Don't clench. Take the punch. Be fluid. I think that's how Houdini died. He clenched the last time he took a blow, and it burst his kidney. So don't clench. Crisis PR takeaway. We went from baseball and we ended with boxing. Dave, thank you so much for being here. Truly, for sharing your wisdom, your story, your genius, and then the cause that tied so beautifully, the ugly, the good, the bad, that we go through it all. And as he said, there's nothing that you need to hide from. And truly, what a treat. Thank you, Dave. And thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed this. You can find Dave's information, the cause he cares about, all the amazing things. I invite you to reach out to him. If you're the founder of a conscious organization, or if it's a regular organization, if you're fully spiritual or not, reach out to this guy, because he's in integrity. And this is something that I hope today you're seeing, that bringing the spiritual with the practical together, bringing soul, bringing whatever you want to call it, the essence of what Dave brings and the impact is what's needed, not only with crisis PR leadership. But thanks for joining us. If you like this episode, share it. Get the mission out there. Equip other leaders wherever you're at to do this inner work. And we will see you back next time on the Vulnerable Power Show.